वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत् शृण्वतां स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदयन्तस्थो हि भद्राणि विदुनोति सुहृच्छतं नाष्टप्रायश भद्रेषु नित्यं भागवतसेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 23, titled Maharaj Prutu's Going Back Home, Text 15 and 16. Text 15. Utsarpayam stutam murdni kramena vesha nihsprihah vayum vayaukshitau kayam tejas tejasi ayujujat. उत्सर्पयंस्तु तं मूर्ध्नि रमेणावेश्य निःस्पृहः वायुं वायौ क्षितौ कायं तेजस्तेजसि अयुयुजत्. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Translation. In this way, Prithu Maharaj gradually raised his air of life up to the hole in his skull, whereupon he lost all desire for material existence. Gradually, he merged his air of life with the totality of air, his body with the totality of earth, and the fire within his body with the totality of fire. Purport. When the spiritual spark, which is described as 1/10,000th part of the tip of a hair, is forced into material existence, that spark is covered by gross and subtle material elements. The material body is composed of 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether, and 3 subtle elements: mind, intelligence, and ego. When one attains liberation, he is freed from these material coverings. Indeed, success in yoga involves getting free from these material coverings and entering into spiritual existence. Lord Buddha's teachings of nirvana are based on this principle. Lord Buddha instructed his followers to give up these material coverings by means of meditation and yoga. Lord Buddha did not give any information about the soul, but if one follows his instructions strictly, he will ultimately become free from the material coverings and attain nirvana. When a living entity gives up the material coverings, he remains a spirit soul. This spirit soul must enter into the spiritual sky to merge into the Brahman effulgence. Unfortunately, unless the living entity has information of the spiritual world and the Vaikunthas, there is a 99.9% chance of his falling down again into material existence. There is, however, a small chance of being promoted to a spiritual planet from the Brahman effulgence or the Brahma Jyoti. This Brahma Jyoti is considered by impersonalists to be without variety, and the Buddhists consider it to be void. In either case, whether one accepts the spiritual sky as being without variety or void, there is none of the spiritual bliss which is enjoyed in the spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas or Krishna Loka. In this absence of varieties of enjoyment, the spirit soul gradually feels an attraction to enjoy a life of bliss. And not having any information of Krishna Loka or Vaikuntha Loka, he naturally falls down to material activities in order to enjoy material activities or material varieties. Text 16. Khani akashe dravam toye yada sthanam vibhagashah क्षितिम् अम्भसि तत्तेजसि अधो वायौ नभस्यमुम् खानि आकाशे द्रवं तोये यथा स्थानं विभागशः क्षितिम् अम्भसि तत्तेजसि अधो वायौ नभस्यमुम्. Report. Sorry, translation and purport. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. In this way, according to the different positions of the various parts of the body, Prithu Maharaj merged the wholes of his senses with the sky, his bodily liquids such as blood and various secretions with the totality of water, and he merged earth with water, then water with fire, fire with air, air with sky, and so on. Purport. In this verse, 2 words are very important. Yatasthanam vibhagashaha. In Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd canto, 5th chapter, Lord Brahma clearly explained to Narada how the creation took place. And he explained one step after another the proper divisions of the senses, the controller of the senses, the objects of the senses, the material elements, and he also explained how they are created one after another. The air from the sky, the fire from the air, the water from the fire, the earth from the water, etc. It is important to know thoroughly the process of creation as it applies to this cosmic manifestation. Similarly, this body is also created according to the same process by the Supreme Lord. The personality of Godhead, after entering the universe, and creates the cosmic manifestations one after another. Similarly, the living entity, after entering the womb of a mother, also collects its gross and subtle bodies, taking ingredients from the totality of sky, air, fire, water, and earth. The words ithasthanam vibhagashaha indicate that one should know the process of creation and should meditate upon the creative process inversely and thus become free from material contamination. Rough purport. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavade Bhashyatya Deshadarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I humbly seek the blessings of all assembled Vaishnavas, and thank you for the opportunity to purify myself by summarizing from Srimad Bhagavatam today. Please forgive if I add my own interpretation to the summary. So we're in the section or in the chapter titled Maharaj Prithu's Going Back Home, and we are seeing how Prithu Maharaj is leaving his body. So this is not the common or normal death process, but this is kind of the liberation process that we are seeing here. Because in the time of death, the soul doesn't leave the body. Rather, the soul is forced by agencies such as the Yamadutas and other demigods to leave the body and to take another body. But here, rather, Prithu Maharaj is voluntarily um, uh, getting liberated, and his soul is like voluntarily being sent out of the body. So, and also we see in the verse in the purport that Prabhupada is saying that this is the process by which we can get rid of the material coverings, because the soul is covered by the gross and subtle material elements. That is the process of creation. But when one goes through the process and when he gets liberated, then this subtle coverings are eliminated, and the soul is free to go to the next step. So here we see also that Prithu Maharaj is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. So he could have directly appeared and disappeared, like we have seen in other incarnations of the Supreme Lord. But here he's going through the process to show how to live and how to leave the body. We saw how wonderfully Prithu Maharaj led as a king, and also while leaving the body, he's showing how one should control his mind and senses, how one should focus on the Supreme Lord and leave the body. So we also see in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna, being the Supreme Lord himself, also set examples um, that he went to Gurukul, he had a guru. So the important lesson here is that, as shown by Krishna himself and Prithu Maharaj, that we should first try to preach what we also speak. We may be speaking several things, but we should always pause and think if we are doing the same thing. When we preach, we should ensure that we are also doing and following the instruction we are hearing and we are repeating. So in the verse 16, we see how it is mentioned about the process, the similarity between the process of creation and also the process of a womb developing in a mother. A womb developing in mother. So, Prabhupada, actually in verse 15, before we also see that Prabhupada is kind of hammering on the point that even if you get to the Brahman effulgence platform, um, where the soul might merge into the Brahman effulgence, which is kind of the ultimate goal by the jnanis. Unfortunately, unless the living entity has information of the spiritual world and the Vaikunthas, there is a 99.9% chance of his falling down into the material existence. And we also heard from like His Grace Mukundatta Prabhu yesterday and day before yesterday that basically the innate quality of the soul is to seek bliss or to be always blissful. And it is impossible, as Prabhupada mentions, 99.9% impossible for it to be blissful in this material world, um, or even in the level of the Brahman effulgence, uh, without having the information about the Vaikunthas or about the personal form of Krishna and where he resides, such as Vrindavan, Goloka Vrindavan. So um, otherwise, without that knowledge, the soul is going to be again in the cycle of birth and death. So, I mean, this kind of again reminds us on how fortunate we are that through the mercy of Guru Parampara and Srila Prabhupada and ISKCON, we are so fortunate to have this information. We are getting this information. We're reminded of this information every day about the existence of Vaikuntha Loka, Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, the personal form of Krishna. And this is the only way where we can uh, get rid of this cycle of birth and death and get to our original or innate blissful state. So then in verse 16, we see how the verse and Prabhupada is kind of comparing the process of creation to the process of womb development. And in fact, the big universe is created in the same way as a small body is created within a womb. Of course, quantitatively, very different, but qualitatively very similar. For example, if a small cell of a body under a microscope is compared to the universal, the different universes of the material world, it's very similar because if you zoom in the universes, the big universes, it'll if you zoom out, then it'll look like a small cell. Similarly, if you zoom in to a small cell, then it'll look like a universe. So again, quantitatively very different, but qualitatively very similar. And it also Prabhupada also stresses here about that it's very important to know the process of creation. And we know different people in different levels or category see differently the process of creation or the creation itself. For example, we can relate this to how the karmis, jnanis, and devotees look at the creation. So karmis basically try to see creation as the place of enjoyment, and that's what they wanted. I mean, as we know, we are primarily here in the first place because we turned away from Krishna in the spiritual world, and we wanted to enjoy. So karmis again see this place of creation as opportunity to enjoy, and they have they have different senses, and there are hundreds and thousands of sense objects to enjoy with, and then they try to grab everything possible and they try to enjoy. So that's how karmis see. And then the next level is kind of the jnanis who are like advanced, who are little advanced than the karmis, and they don't see this creation, place of creation or the overall creation as facility for enjoyment, but rather they have tried the enjoyment and they see that it leads only to misery, and they think now that this whole creation is a miserable prison house. So they basically reject all the sense objects. They try to lead a very austere life, and these are like yogis and transcendentalists, and then they reject sense objects. They whenever they come in contact with sense objects, they reject completely. And even like as we saw in today's purport, like the Buddhists basically they say everything is a void, but then the jnanis here they say everything is kind of a misery, leads to misery. But then there is this third category of like devotees or bhaktas who follow the bhakti process. Primarily, in the initial stages, they follow like the sadhana bhakti, and then they get to the rupanuga, raganuga bhakti. So, but devotees overall generally they treat the sense objects as objects of service to Krishna. They understand that Krishna is the owner of sense objects and that he should enjoy it first. And any object can be accepted in service, uh, or any object can be engaged in or used if it could be offered to Krishna. Because for example, Prabhupada gives his example that a father has money, and then a son takes his father's money and then goes and buys something for the father and then gives it back to the father. And the same object the father could have gotten from the market also. But because the son got it for the father with love and gave it back, then it's much, much more valuable. And because there is such nice exchange within the family that like the daughter, son, or wife like expresses love this way to the father, then the father is ready to do any work. He is ready to toil for the family, to earn money, to kind of satisfy them, so that he could get this reciprocation of love. So same way Krishna also desires love. I mean, he gave us everything, but all he's expecting is for us to basically take his own facilities and then add this factor of love and give it back. And that then it's much more valuable to Krishna, and it's much, much appreciated by Krishna. So um, this is kind of the other lesson that comes out of the section, that as aspiring devotees, practicing devotees, we should see the creation and all the sense objects as offerings to Krishna. So how can we use these and offer back to Krishna? And if we keep doing this, if we see everything as an offering to Krishna, and if we think about Krishna in whatever we do, then our love for Krishna increases. Early on, maybe it is kind of mechanical, but then eventually it'll become very natural. So that is why, I mean, our parampara and all our previous acharyas have always reminded us to perform our daily sadhana regularly. Although it might be like very monotonous or repeatable, like we are doing the same chanting, same deity worship, and same Srimad Bhagavatam reading. So it may sound like very, very monotonous and repeatable, but then it's similar to the food we eat or the prasadam we eat and the nourishment we get. I mean, we could eat the same rice dal every day, and we could still get nourishment. I mean, the nourishment part is like subtle. I mean, if we eat, then we are getting the nourishment for sure. But if you say, "Oh, I'm not going to eat today because it's boring," then you don't get nourishment that day. So similarly, the sadhana process, performing every day, gives us the nourishment, gives us the connection to Krishna, gives us the remembrance to Krishna, and that is so important um, to see the creation the right way, to understand why we are here and what our goal is. And then ultimately, as we see in like verse 15, it is stressed that unless we hear, know, and have the knowledge about Krishna and his abode and his pastimes, it is impossible to be blissful, both in this life and then in the next life. So again, just to summarize, we saw how it is important to practice what we preach. Krishna and Prithu Maharaj set examples of that. And then also we see that although everything is provided by Krishna, we just have to use it back in his service. We accept only things that could be offered, and we reject things that could not be offered. And we have to add this factor of love, which we saw in this example of the father and child, where father is so happy and then blissful when the son gives back his own money in a different form, but added with love. And then the daily sadhana we do, although may sound monotonous, we should still practice it very, very strictly, regularly, as advised by Guru Sadhu Shastra, because that is what gives us nourishment. And although it is not um, it might be subtle that we are getting nourishment, but we are getting nourishment. That's how we can always remember Krishna and then stay under um, um, uh, the merciful state, and then we can be sure that we are blissful in this state and then in the next life also.